The outcast warrior. The corridors of Nexus Station fell silent whenever Thyra Vex walked through them. At 9 feet tall with metallic bronze scales that caught the station's artificial lighting, she was an imposing sight that made even the bravest merchant step aside. Her amber eyes glowed with an inner fire, and the deep scars across her face told stories of battles that most beings could only imagine in nightmares. As the station's head of security, she was responsible for protecting over 50,000 inhabitants from dozens of different species. But her own people treated her like a dangerous weapon that might explode at any moment. Thyra's massive boots echoed against the metal flooring as she made her morning rounds through the commercial district. Vendors quickly looked away when she passed, their conversations dropping to whispers. A group of young draconian traders huddled together near a spice merchant's stall, their smaller frames and lighter scales marking them as typical examples of her species. When they noticed her approach, fear flickered across their faces. "Security Officer Vex," one of them stammered, offering a nervous bow. "Everything is peaceful here today." Thyra nodded curtly and continued walking. She had learned long ago not to attempt friendly conversation with her own kind. The genetic modifications that had made her larger and stronger than any natural draconian had also made her an outcast. Her people valued harmony and careful diplomacy, but she had been bred for war during the ancient conflicts with the Stellar Empire. Now in peacetime, she was a living reminder of violence that her pacifist species preferred to forget. Her communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Station Commander Kellex. "Thyra, report to Engineering Section C immediately. We have a critical situation." The engineering section was located in the station's lower levels, where the massive fusion reactors and life support systems hummed with constant activity. As Thyra descended through the transport tubes, she could hear alarms blaring from the emergency systems. The situation was clearly serious if they were calling for her personally, instead of sending regular maintenance crews. Commander Kellex was waiting near the main reactor complex, his normally calm demeanor replaced by visible anxiety. Unlike Thyra, he was a typical draconian with sleek features and scales that shimmered with silver highlights. His height barely reached her shoulders, and he always seemed uncomfortable when forced to look up at her during conversations. "The primary coolant system has failed," Kellex explained quickly. "If we cannot restore it within 6 hours, the reactor will overheat and destroy half the station. Our engineering teams are working desperately, but they need someone with your unique capabilities to access the damaged conduits." Thyra understood immediately. The repair work would require someone strong enough to tear through twisted metal and agile enough to navigate the cramped maintenance tunnels that regular draconians could not enter. Once again, her modifications made her useful for tasks that others could not handle. "What caused the failure?" she asked, studying the diagnostic displays that showed dangerous temperature readings throughout the reactor complex. "We believe it was sabotage," Kellex admitted reluctantly. "Someone with advanced technical knowledge planted explosive devices in multiple redundant systems. They wanted to ensure maximum damage." Before Thyra could respond to this disturbing news, a new voice interrupted their conversation. "Excuse me, Commander. I'm Marcus Chen from Earth's Colonial Engineering Corps. I understand you have a reactor emergency." Both draconians turned to see a human male approaching from the transport tube. He was average height for his species, with dark hair and intelligent brown eyes that studied the engineering displays with professional interest. His uniform bore the insignia of an experienced engineer, and he carried a toolkit that contained equipment unfamiliar to Thyra. Commander Kellex looked surprised. "A human? We did not request assistance from Earth." Marcus smiled calmly. "Actually, you did. 3 days ago, your engineering department sent a priority request for someone experienced with fusion reactor systems. I was in the sector finishing another job, so they sent me over. Lucky timing, I guess." Thyra found herself studying the human with curiosity. Most species that encountered her for the first time showed obvious signs of fear or discomfort, but Marcus Chen seemed completely at ease. His eyes met hers without flinching, and he offered a polite nod of acknowledgement. "You're Thyra Vex, right?" Marcus asked. "I read your file during the trip over. Impressive service record." fought in the border wars, and helped establish the Neutral Zone Accords. For a moment, Thyra was speechless. No one ever mentioned her military accomplishments in casual conversation. Most beings were too intimidated by her appearance to care about her achievements. "Yes," she replied carefully. "That was many years ago." "Still counts," Marcus said with genuine respect. "Those conflicts saved millions of lives and established the peace we have today. The engineering corps studies those campaigns as examples of strategic thinking." Commander Kellix cleared his throat impatiently. "While your military history is fascinating, we have a reactor crisis to address. Mr. Chen, can your expertise help us avoid catastrophe?" Marcus was already moving toward the damaged systems, his experienced eyes analyzing the problem with quick efficiency. "The sabotage was professional work," he observed after examining the wreckage. "Whoever did this knew exactly which systems to target for maximum effect." "Can it be repaired?" Thyra asked. "Maybe, but not through conventional methods. The access tunnels are too small for standard repair equipment, and the damage is too extensive for remote systems." Marcus looked up at Thyra with a calculating expression. "However, if someone strong enough could clear the debris and create access points, I might be able to reach the critical components." Commander Kellix shook his head immediately. "Too dangerous. The radiation levels in those areas would be lethal for most species." "Not for her," Marcus said, gesturing toward Thyra. "Draconians have natural radiation resistance, and someone with her genetic modifications could probably handle short exposures to the damaged areas." Thyra felt a familiar mixture of emotions. Once again, her physical advantages were needed to solve a problem that others could not handle. She was useful, but only because she was different from everyone else. "I will do it," she said simply. Marcus nodded approvingly. "Good. We'll work as a team. You handle the physical access, and I'll manage the technical repairs. Between your strength and my knowledge of these systems, we might actually pull this off." The next several hours were unlike anything Thyra had experienced in her long career. Instead of working alone while others watched nervously from a safe distance, she found herself in constant communication with Marcus as they tackled different aspects of the repair job. He treated her as an equal partner, asking for her opinions, and listening to her suggestions with genuine interest. "Can you reach the coolant manifold behind that twisted support beam?" Marcus's voice came through her helmet communicator as she navigated the damaged reactor chamber. Thyra examined the obstacle with her enhanced vision. The metal beam had been bent by the explosion into a position that blocked access to critical components. "I can move it, but the structural damage could cause additional problems." "Let me run some calculations," Marcus replied. She could hear him working rapidly on his portable computer. "Okay, if you can shift it exactly 12 degrees counterclockwise, the stress will redistribute to undamaged supports." Following his precise instructions, Thyra carefully applied her strength to bend the massive beam back into a position that allowed access to the repair site. It was delicate work that required both power and control, exactly the kind of task that her modifications had been designed for. "Perfect," Marcus said with satisfaction. "Your precision is incredible. I've worked with construction robots that couldn't have done that better." The compliment warmed something inside Thyra's chest that had been cold for years. When was the last time someone had praised her skill rather than simply acknowledging her usefulness? As they continued working, Marcus maintained a steady stream of conversation that helped pass the tense hours. He talked about his experiences traveling between different worlds, the challenges of working with alien technology, and his fascination with the diverse engineering solutions developed by different species. "Draconian reactor design is brilliant," he observed while calibrating a replacement component. "The way your people integrated biological principles with mechanical systems shows incredible creativity. Humans tend to brute force our engineering problems, but Draconians find elegant solutions that work with natural forces instead of against them." "You know much about my people's history," Thyra noted. "I study all the species I work with," Marcus replied. "Understanding different perspectives makes me a better engineer. Plus, Draconian culture is fascinating. The transition from a warrior society to peaceful traders happened faster than most xenosociologists thought possible. Thyra was quiet for a moment before responding. Not all of us made the transition successfully. Marcus paused in his work. You mean because of your military background? Because of what I am, Thyra said, her voice carrying years of accumulated pain. My genetic line was created for war. Enhanced strength, improved reflexes, increased aggression. When peace came, my people wanted to forget that such beings had ever been necessary. That's their loss, Marcus said simply. From what I've seen today, your enhancements give you capabilities that could benefit everyone if properly applied. You're not just a weapon, you're a protector. The distinction hit Thyra with unexpected force. A protector, not a weapon. The words seemed to reframe her entire existence in a way she had never considered. The repairs are nearly complete, Marcus announced. Thanks to your help, we're going to save the station. As they finished the final connections and watched the reactor systems return to normal operation, Thyra realized that something fundamental had changed during their hours of working together. For the first time since the ancient wars ended, she felt like someone valued her for who she was rather than simply what she could do. Thank you, she said as they prepared to leave the reactor chamber. Marcus looked puzzled. For what? You did most of the dangerous work. For treating me like a person instead of a threat. Marcus's expression grew serious. Anyone who treats you as a threat without getting to know you first is making a serious mistake. You're one of the most capable individuals I've ever worked with. As they rode the transport tube back to the upper levels, Thyra found herself wondering if this human engineer might be the first step toward a different kind of future than she had imagined possible. The Unlikely Alliance. 3 weeks after the EOI reactor incident, Thyra found herself looking forward to her daily rounds for the first time in years. Marcus had extended his stay on Nexus Station to oversee additional system upgrades, and their professional relationship had evolved into something resembling friendship. Each morning, she would find him in the engineering sections, working on improvements to the station's infrastructure, while maintaining a running commentary about the technical challenges he encountered. The problem with multi-species stations, Marcus explained as they walked through the environmental control centers, is that every race has different atmospheric requirements. Humans like oxygen-nitrogen mix, draconians prefer higher humidity, and the crystalline entities need specialized mineral particles in their air supply. Thyra nodded, genuinely interested in his explanations. How do you manage to keep everyone comfortable? Zonal atmospheric control systems, Marcus replied, pointing to the complex network of pipes and filters that lined the ceiling. Each section can be customized for different species, but it requires constant monitoring and adjustment. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alarm that echoed through the station's communication system. All security personnel to stations immediately. This is not a drill. Hostile forces have been detected approaching the station. Thyra's warrior instincts kicked in immediately. Stay here, she ordered Marcus as she headed for the security command center. Like hell, Marcus replied, following her toward the transport tubes. If the station is under attack, the engineering systems might be targeted. You'll need someone who understands the technical infrastructure. The command center was chaos when they arrived. Commander Kellex stood before multiple displays, showing the tactical situation. His normally composed demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. Outside the station, 20 sleek black ships were approaching in attack formation. Void Syndicate raiders, Kellex announced grimly. They've demanded that we surrender all cargo vessels and transfer credits from our financial systems. If we refuse, they will destroy the station. Thyra studied the enemy ships on the tactical display. The Void Syndicate was a criminal organization that specialized in high-value targets like trading stations and shipping convoys. They were known for their advanced technology and ruthless tactics. What are our defensive capabilities? She asked. Kellex looked uncomfortable. Limited. This is a civilian trading post, not a military installation. We have basic shields and some point defense weapons, but nothing that could stop a coordinated assault by 20 warships. Marcus was examining the sensor readings over the shoulder of a nervous technician. "Those aren't standard Raider ships," he observed. "Look at the power signatures and weapon configurations. Someone has upgraded their equipment with military-grade systems." Thyra felt a cold realization forming in her mind. "This is connected to the reactor sabotage. Someone wanted to weaken our defenses before the main attack." "You think there's a connection?" Kellex asked. "The saboteur had detailed knowledge of our systems," Thyra explained. "They knew exactly which components to target for maximum damage. This feels like preparation for a larger operation." Before anyone could respond to her analysis, the communication system crackled with an incoming message from the Raiders. The face that appeared on the main screen belonged to a Corvan mercenary, with cybernetic implants covering half his skull. "Greetings, Nexus Station," the Raider leader said with mock politeness. "I am Captain Vorthak of the Syndicate vessel Shadowblade. Your station contains cargo worth approximately 50 million galactic credits. Transfer it to our ships immediately, or we will take it by force." Commander Kellex stepped forward to respond. "Captain Vorthak, this station is protected under galactic trade accords. Any attack on civilian vessels will result in severe consequences from the Peacekeeping Council." The Raider laughed harshly. "The Council is 3 days away at minimum response time. By then, your station will be debris floating in space. You have 30 minutes to comply with our demands." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. Thyra knew that surrendering to Raiders would set a dangerous precedent that could threaten every civilian station in the sector. However, their defensive options were extremely limited. "What if we evacuate the civilian population and fight back?" suggested Lieutenant Korex, one of the younger security officers. Kellex shook his head immediately. "Impossible. We only have 4 security officers and basic weapons. The Raiders have superior numbers, better equipment, and combat experience." Thyra looked around the room at her fellow Draconians. She could see fear in their eyes, but also something else that troubled her deeply. They were looking at her expectantly, waiting for her to propose some desperate battle plan that would get them all killed. "They want me to be the weapon," she realized. "They expect me to charge into hopeless odds because that's what my genetic programming was designed for." The thought filled her with a familiar sense of isolation. Even in a crisis, her own people saw her as a tool to be used rather than a person whose life had value. Marcus seemed to sense her internal struggle. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. "I'm thinking that everyone expects me to fight 20 ships with my bare hands," Thyra replied bitterly. "Because that's what weapons are for." "You're not a weapon," Marcus said firmly. "You're a strategist." "What would a strategist do in this situation?" The question caught Thyra off guard. When was the last time someone had asked for her tactical analysis rather than simply expecting her to charge into battle? She studied the enemy formation on the tactical display with professional interest. "The Raiders are confident because they have overwhelming force," she observed. "But overconfidence creates vulnerabilities. They're not expecting serious resistance from a civilian station." "What kind of vulnerabilities?" Marcus asked. "Their ships are designed for quick strikes against lightly defended targets," Thyra explained. "They prioritize speed and firepower over heavy armor or defensive systems. If we could somehow get close, enough for boarding actions, their advantage would be negated." Commander Kellex looked skeptical. "How could we possibly get close enough to board enemy warships? Our transport shuttles would be destroyed before they traveled half the distance." Marcus was studying the station schematics on a nearby terminal. "What about the maintenance pods?" he suggested. "They're designed for external repairs and have minimal sensor signatures. Raiders might not detect them until it's too late." Thyra considered the proposal with growing interest. The maintenance pods were small single-person vehicles used for fixing damage to the station's outer hull. They had basic life support and maneuvering systems, but no weapons or significant armor. "It could work," she admitted, "but it would be a suicide mission. 1 person in a maintenance pod against a heavily armed warship." "Not 1 person," Marcus said quietly. 2 people. You handle the combat aspects and I'll manage the technical infiltration. Those ships need to dock with the station to transfer cargo. If we can get aboard and disable their systems from the inside." The suggestion was so unexpected that Thyra could only stare at him. You want to volunteer for a combat mission? You're an engineer, not a soldier. I'm whatever the situation requires, Marcus replied with calm determination. Besides, you'll need someone who understands ship systems if we're going to have any chance of success. Commander Kellix looked horrified. Absolutely not. I cannot authorize such a dangerous plan. The risks are completely unacceptable. More unacceptable than letting raiders destroy the station? Thyra asked pointedly. Before Kellix could respond, the tactical display showed new movement from the raider fleet. Several ships were breaking formation and approaching the station's docking bays. They're preparing to board us, the sensor operator announced nervously. Multiple ships inbound for forced docking procedures. Thyra made her decision. Commander, with respect, we're out of time for safer alternatives. She turned to Marcus. Are you absolutely certain about this? Marcus nodded without hesitation. Completely certain. Someone needs to stop these raiders, and we're the only ones who can do it. The next 20 minutes were a blur of rapid preparation. Thyra retrieved her personal combat armor from the security armory, while Marcus gathered specialized equipment for disabling ship systems. They met at the maintenance pod bay, where the small repair vehicles were stored. Remember, Marcus said, as they performed final equipment checks, the goal is to disable their command ship. If we can knock out their leader and communication systems, the other raiders might retreat. Thyra sealed her helmet and activated the pod's launch sequence. And if they don't retreat, then we improvise, Marcus replied with a grin that was visible through his helmet's faceplate. The maintenance pod launched silently from the station's underside, using minimal power to avoid detection by radar sensors. Thyra piloted the small craft with expert skill, threading through the maze of approaching enemy ships toward their primary target. The Raider command vessel was larger than the others, with additional sensor arrays and communication equipment that marked it as Vorthak's flagship. If they could reach it undetected, they might have a chance of turning the entire battle. Contact in 30 seconds, Thyra announced as they approached the enemy ship's docking bay. Are you ready for this? Marcus was checking his equipment one final time. Ready as I'll ever be. Just get us inside and I'll handle the technical aspects. The maintenance pod attached to the Raider ship's hull with a soft metallic clang. Marcus immediately went to work with a plasma cutter, creating an access point through the outer armor. Within minutes, they were inside the enemy vessel, moving through corridors filled with hostile aliens who had no idea that their ship had been infiltrated. Thyra's enhanced senses allowed her to navigate the ship's layout with impressive efficiency. She could hear the heartbeats of crew members around corners, smell the different pheromones that indicated stress or alertness, and detect the subtle vibrations that revealed which systems were operating at maximum capacity. Command center is 2 levels up, she whispered into her communicator. I count 12 crew members between us and the target. Can you handle 12 raiders without raising an alarm? Marcus asked. Watch me, Thyra replied with grim satisfaction. Moving through the ship like a living shadow, Thyra systematically disabled the raider crew with precise strikes that left them unconscious but alive. Her genetic modifications allowed her to move faster and strike harder than any of the enemies expected, while her warrior training ensured that each attack was perfectly calculated. Marcus followed behind her, planting small devices on critical systems throughout the ship. EMP charges, he explained quietly. When I trigger them, every electronic system on this ship will shut down simultaneously. They reached the command center to find Captain Vorthak coordinating the attack on Nexus Station. The Corvan mercenary was shouting orders at his crew, demanding faster progress in breaching the station's defenses. Now, Thyra whispered. Marcus activated his devices, and the raider ship went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in, but all the main systems were offline. In the confusion, Thyra burst through the command center doors like an avenging angel. Captain Vorthak spun around in shock, his cybernetic implants sparking from the electromagnetic pulse. Impossible. How did you get aboard my ship? Human ingenuity and draconian determination, Thyra replied, advancing on the raider leader with deliberate menace. Your operation ends now. The battle in the command center was brief but intense. Vorthak was a skilled fighter with enhanced reflexes, but he had never faced someone with Thyra's genetic modifications. Within minutes, the raider captain was unconscious on the floor and his crew had surrendered. Marcus was already working at the communication console. "I'm sending a message to the other raider ships," he announced. "Their leader is captured, their command vessel is disabled, and Peacekeeping Council reinforcements are en route." The response was immediate. One by one, the raider ships began withdrawing from the station, unwilling to continue the attack without their leader or coordination from the command vessel. As they piloted the captured raider ship back to Nexus Station, Thyra felt a profound sense of accomplishment that went beyond simple victory. For the first time in her life, she had found someone who valued her abilities without fearing her nature. "That was incredible teamwork," Marcus said as they prepared to dock with the station. "Your combat skills combined with technical support created possibilities that neither of us could have achieved alone." Thyra looked at her human partner with genuine respect. "You risked your life to help protect strangers. That shows courage that no genetic modification can create." When they returned to the command center, Commander Kellix and the other Draconians looked at them with expressions of amazement and newfound respect. For the first time, Thyra's own people seemed to see her as more than just a dangerous relic from their warrior past. "Outstanding work," Kellix said formally. "Both of you showed exceptional bravery and skill." As the crisis wound down and normal operations resumed, Thyra realized that her relationship with Marcus had fundamentally changed her perspective on her place in the galaxy. She was still genetically enhanced, still larger and stronger than her peaceful species preferred. But now she understood that these differences could be strengths rather than sources of isolation. "So what happens next?" Marcus asked as they stood in the observation deck watching the stars beyond the station. "Next, we continue working together," Thyra replied. "The galaxy has many problems that require both human creativity and draconian strength to solve." Marcus smiled. "I like the sound of that partnership." For the first time since the ancient wars ended, Thyra felt like she belonged somewhere. Not as a weapon to be feared or a tool to be used, but as a person whose unique abilities could make a positive difference in the universe. And she had learned this lesson from a species that her people barely knew, proving that understanding and acceptance could bridge any gap between different worlds and different kinds of beings.